Is there any scenario under which if people force their way across the border, they could be shot at?
We do not have any intention right now to shoot at people. They will be apprehended, however. But I also take my officer and agent, their own personal safety extraordinarily seriously. They do have the ability, of course, to defend themselves.
So if shot at, they would shoot back?
No, I think we'd have to work through that.
Wow.
Willie, what do we say?
What are we talking about here? What are we doing?
It's Jan.
They're asking about shooting at nothing across the border. Are you going to shoot at them? They're not here for 2 months, probably, or a month. May not even come. Only 14 apprehended last time. Can you believe that? They're talking about what the terms of conflict are going to be for this invasion of America that's never going to happen. And I was listening to Clint, and you do so much work for military veterans and for people that have given so much of their life to protecting, defending this country. And how sad would it be for these people that have been sent to Afghanistan and Iraq and also humanitarian relief across the globe, to think they're going to come home and finally be able to spend some time with their family and be sent down to Mexico, the border of Mexico, for a caravan that's not coming, for a political exercise to make Donald Trump look strong before the election? What a joke.
And they're going to be sitting down there for months if they're sent down there soon, a month, maybe 2 months, waiting for a handful of families to come to the border. I don't know, and I maybe give the benefit of the doubt. I didn't hear the full context of the question, but why are we talking about shooting at these people? I don't know. Are we talking specifically about the caravan or anything? I don't know why the conversation has gone there, when in fact the entire issue is propaganda, effectively, to get people out to the polls in 11 days. And now we're escalating that propaganda and that conversation to talk about shooting people at the border. It's beyond me. Let's go to the Pentagon. NBC News correspondent Hans Nichols is there. Hans, what is your understanding of the operation that could be signed off on here, that James Mattis could send 800 to 1,000 troops to the border, and what exactly would be their role there?
Well, we don't know what their role is, in part because Mattis hasn't fully reviewed and signed this order. He's on the plane tonight heading to Bahrain. Everyone here at the Pentagon, guys, is waiting for the official signing of this order from Mattis. And then we'll see what contours this mission, or what the shape actually is. And there are really two prospects here. One, this is entirely cosmetic. This is a way to say Trump is sending federal troops. Remember, there's still authorization to send about another 1,900 National Guard troops down there. So there's a question here no one's really been able to answer it. Why are they sending federal troops when they still have space on the earlier National Guard authorization? But if it's not cosmetic and you do task them with things like border reinforcement, you could see U.S. troops down on the border laying concertina wire, having engineers working on some sort of wall-type situation. You could also have ISR, and that means drones up in the air. There are a lot of military assets. We simply just don't know whether or not this is cosmetic or whether or not this is federalizing the border. And real quickly, guys, on to this question of whether or not anyone would be shot. That's not such a hypothetical. Joe, you may remember from your time in Congress, in 1997, the Marines shot an 18-year-old American citizen, a goat herder, the last time there was a mass mobilization. You had a lot of federal troops preventing drug flow from the southern border. So that memory is still very raw here, and there's some institutional memory of that. Guys?
Hans, is there any pushback from the Pentagon on this order? Is James Mattis saying to the White House that I'm not sure we need 1,000 armed infantrymen along the border?
He really only got this order before he got on the plane last night, because they needed the order to come from DHS, and then he was going to review it on the plane. He's expected to sign it. He lands in a couple hours in Bahrain. So how Mattis finesses this, I think, is an interesting question. And just what the troops are tasked with. Are they going to be tasked with intelligence? Are they going to be doing surveillance? Are they going to send engineers down? Because if they do, that's an indication the president's using federal troops, Title X troops, to do something he couldn't do through Congress and politically. Guys?
And again, the president, Joe, has declared this a national emergency, which, as he knows, gives him wider latitude to use his troops. Thank you, Hans.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Hans. Yeah, but Willie, I mean, again, we're not talking about drug dealers streaming across the border. The president's own administration has statistics that show that it's like 0.003% of these people may even be affiliated with the gangs. There is no national emergency. There's not in October. There won't be in November. There really won't even be in December. I cannot imagine that James Mattis would send a single troop to the border and make them miss the holidays with their families so Donald Trump looks stronger 12 days from now in a midterm election. Because we know after the midterm election, any troops that are sent to the border, you know, are probably going to be brought right back. It's a total waste of U.S. dollars and attention, especially, again, as Joy said, at a time when we're coming off all of these pipe bombs being sent to former presidents and CIA directors.
Yeah, and that's why I asked Hans if there's been any pushback from Mattis. Maybe there has been privately, but to go through this charade to get voters out to the polls in the midterms and using United States troops as props in that charade is wrong on its face, and I'll be interested to see if General Mattis goes along with it. We've got a lot more.
Can't imagine he'd do it, Willie.
No.
I can't imagine he'd do it.
We will see. Coming up this morning, a closer look at the president's midterm strategy playing to his base. We are back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.